Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul. Hopefully you're having an amazing day. Are you guys interested in picking up an RTX 50 series graphics card? Well, if you have your heart set on an RTX 5090, for example, then there is some very good news potentially. Not only do we now have a pretty good understanding when Nvidia are actually planning to release these cards, thanks to some new reports online, in fact multiple of them, but the power consumption figures that we've been hearing over the past couple of days are most likely incorrect and actually are much more modest, but also we have some updates to the performance as well. So if you missed a video from just a couple of days ago, I'll give you guys a very quick refresher. There were reports online that the RTX 5090 as well as the RTX 5080 had a kind of eye-watering power consumption figure associated with it. The RTX 5080 was going to be utilizing up to 400 watts for its TGP, and the 5090 was up to 600 watts, which I'm sure you'll agree is, well, kind of ludicrous. However, there are now multiple reports from different websites, including Expreview as well as Benchlife, that the reality is a little bit different. So let's begin with the website Expreview. Now I'm going to be using ChatGPT here for the translation. I will of course leave a link to both original articles in the video description, but as a warning, if you use Google Translate, well, Benchlife in particular throws up a couple of pretty big mistranslations. So let's begin with the first couple of paragraphs of this article. So again, you can see the original article, and now we're going to switch to the ChatGPT translated version from Chinese to English. According to reliable information we've received, Nvidia will be introducing a new flagship product tailored for mainland China market, which is the RTX 5090D. This will launch at CES 2025 in early January and expected to hit the market by end of January. It's going to have, quote, a significant boost in performance to gaming, but its AI performance will remain the same compared to the 4090D. Additionally, total card power consumption is set to 600 watts. Put an asterisk there because we'll get more to that in a second. Furthermore, the 4090D is going to be entering end-of-life phase around December. Now, basically what they're saying here essentially is that they're going to be cutting the AI performance basically for the Chinese market, but in terms of raw gaming, it shouldn't affect things too much. But now, this is where things get a little bit trickier because we have to now hop, skip, and jump our way to Benchlife. Now, when it comes to Benchlife, they say that numbers differ from what we know, but let's take it as a reference for now as nothing is finalized. The 50 series cards based on Blackwell is going to be debuting at CES, so that's the same. So they're both saying January. As far as I understand, according to the sources that I've spoken to, and I've said this across a couple of videos, I do think, you know, the first quarter of next year is quite likely for RTX 50, but my information at this point is a little bit old, so Nvidia could have changed things, but again, I think it's quite likely at this point. They say that no AIC, so those would be, you know, the likes of MSI, Zotac, whomever, have received relevant project details, but it's confirmed that AIBs are developing cooling modules. Now, what does that mean? Well, that sounds a bit confusing, right? How can you develop a cooling module? Well, basically it would mean that they don't know the entirety of the specifications of the card. So for example, they wouldn't know the ins and outs of the architecture. So if you were to like go to an engineer who works at Zotac or MSI or something and be like, dude, can you give me some information on the SM count, you know, that type of thing, they might know some information. But if you were to say, can you give me full in-depth information regarding this element, what's happened, they probably wouldn't be able to answer those questions. So basically they're at the point where they have need to know information. But anyway, the early reports suggested that the 5090 TGP could be 550, but according to the latest updates from Coppertight 7, the 5090 may reach a limit of 600 watts. In addition, the 5080 would reach 400 watts. Now, I really want to be clear, Coppertight 7 is not the only person who reported this. There were others as well. So to really, you know, fully put the blame on them, it's not really fair. Secondly, there is so much mixed information at this point. Again, it's like he's got a really good track record, so I don't want to throw anyone under the bus because everyone, including myself, can make mistakes. Anyhow, it's interesting because they say the information is confusing because module manufacturers are basically indicating that there was a 400 watt cooling project earlier, but it's since been cancelled or suspended. The 600 one just never seemed to have started, and the module manufacturers have confirmed Nvidia are working on 5 RTX graphics card projects. Now that makes sense because, well, we know that there's going to be, well, let's just say multiple different RTX 50 cards, right? It's not like they're only going to be releasing the 5080 and the 5090. And potentially you could also say that the 5080 and the 5080D, the 5090, the 5090D, they are separate cards. But I'm just speculating here. I don't know that for certain. Perhaps the 400 and 600 refers to the maximum cooling capacity of the coolers, with the actual TGP being 5090 and the 5090 and 5080 being 550 and 350 watts. They also mention that the project essentially is going to be taking place in September. Now, what I actually think they mean here is that they're essentially saying that the project is essentially going to be starting or finalized in September, but it's a little difficult because different translations have given me different answers, but basically it seems that the project is essentially going to be hitting a major milestone in September, and therefore it's going to be pretty soon that we're going to get a lot more details, because obviously when everything is finalized, you're just going to be able to get a lot more information. Now, personally, and I mentioned this in a previous video, I'd heard 450, 480, and 550 watts for the TGP of the 5090, but that information could certainly be quite old now. That was with around 160-ish SM. I don't have the exact number. It could be, 160 dead on. It could be 172, because again, that's around-ish. And Nvidia are pretty infamous for just changing things last minute. Anyway, again, if you look back at all of the 4090 rumors and the 4080 rumors from when Lovelace, of course, had not been released, you'll get a good understanding of what I mean here. And even you go back to the RTX 30 series and so on and so forth, it's all pretty much the same. Nvidia just kind of changes things around. The only things that I've had pretty consistently is that the 5080 is going to outperform the 4090 by a decent amount probably being around 10-20%, and the 5090 technically could be up to around 50% faster than the 4090, but the problem is most likely Nvidia are going to be nerfing the 5090 with like a 448-bit bus, and God knows the amount of SM. So is it really going to be hitting that in reality? It's hard to know. Like, technically it could if they pushed it, but because there is no high-end competition from AMD, because of course RDNA 4's Halos are just, well, dead, they don't really need to. So my gut feeling is that it's going to be decent, but I still think there's going to be a Titan and so on, but it's going to be quite interesting. So anyway, guys, I think we're going to learn a lot more pretty soon. I reckon by, like, assuming again it does release in January, probably going to get a pretty good understanding and some pretty tangible leaks in like October, November. I think that these cards are going to be pretty good, to be honest with you. I think they're going to be very impressive. However, one consistent thing I have heard from multiple sources is that while raster performance is decent, as in a big, leap over the current series, ray tracing and, AI and all of that other crap that Nvidia are really doubling down on, that's going to be the big focus for Blackwell, and it is going to continue to do so. With that said, I think that's just about it for this particular video. Apologies for not being on camera. I'm working on a couple of projects right now, so things are just, well, let's just say not really filmable at this point. But take care of yourselves. Have an amazing day. Bye for now.